Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the YouTube version of your uncle who thinks that everything is a conspiracy. And it's that kind of mixture of insanity and analysis that brings us to today's topic, the independent internet darling, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. And today, for our first theory on this series, that's right, I said first, more on that later, we're gonna talk about what the whole thing means. An overview of the main themes of the whole series. Granted, we're not the first people to try and do this. YouTube and Reddit were flooded with theories when the last episode went up. But I really tried to do my homework on this one, and I got an explanation for Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared that'll convince even the most skeptical of theorists. If we're hoping to explain what's going on in Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, we first need to establish what kind of world we're in. A lot of theories look at the bizarre events in this series as evidence of something sinister, such as the three main characters, to whom I'll be referring to from here on out as the red guy, the yellow guy, and the duck, being stuck in purgatory or some sort of nightmare. To that I say, Occam's razor, my friend. A better explanation is one that's a lot simpler. These three are just stars of a children's television show. Granted, it may not be a very nice children's television show, but the evidence is there. There are several instances in which we see the inner workings of a television show. We see clapboards and cameras right in episode 1 at the start of the creativity montage. Then again in episode 4 when the red guy follows the computer wire to the next room, and in episode 6 as the lamp explains dreaming to the yellow guy. We can also tell that most of the time, these characters are on sets. This is most obvious when Duck revolts in episode 5, saying, the perspective of the video changes, indicating that Duck has hit the camera that's filming him, and when the camera looks upward, we can see the characters aren't actually in a house with a ceiling, but in a studio with lights overhead. The other obvious tip-off is that our three main characters are basically archetypes of what you'd see on Sesame Street. The yellow guy is a human puppet, like Bert or Ernie, the duck is an animal puppet, like Snuffleupagus or Big Bird, and the red guy is some sort of humanoid monster, like a Grover or Oscar the Grouch, or those aliens that go meep meep meep, 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 all the time. Those things utterly freaked me out, by the way. And if this is indeed a TV show, it would explain some of the Easter eggs we keep seeing in later episodes. As Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared progresses, we start to see some of the same props appearing over and over again. At the beginning of episode 4, we can see a statue of Malcolm from the previous episode on the fireplace next to the clock. At the start of episode 5, we see the number chart the computer uses in episode 4 attached to the refrigerator, and then there are other props, like the red, blue, and yellow baseball cap that keeps showing up episode after episode. These aren't just cool Easter eggs, they're there for a reason, to decorate the set with props they've used before instead of having to buy entirely new props and set pieces every time. This is common not just within TV shows, but also across productions as a way to save money. There are examples of this practice all over film and TV, like the newspaper from No Country for Old Men showing up in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and even better, Modern Family. The armor from Starship Troopers also makes an appearance in Firefly, or Star Trek literally reusing an entire space station in two completely separate productions. There's one other juicy bit of theorist bait in episode 6 that strongly points to the whole thing being a TV show as well. When the yellow guy is in bed looking through his scrapbook, we see a picture of the red guy, who wasn't in episode 5 except for the credits, and whose bed is empty at the start of episode 6, wearing a graduation cap. Other theorists have suggested that this means that red guy is a teenager who grew up and went out to the real world, but going off to college is also a way for a television show to explain the sudden absence of a main character. For instance, at the end of season 4 of Blue's Clues, the original host Steve announces that he's leaving Blue to go off to college, when in actuality that was just the show transitioning to a new host, letting Steve go and do whatever weird artsy films that he's working on now. So Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is a kids TV show. Awesome! But what does it mean? What the heck are the makers of the show trying to say? Well, the first part of this is fairly obvious. Television messages that are delivered to children are corrupting them as much as they're helping them. Those episodes of Sesame Street? Oh yeah, leading your kids down a dark path of brainwashing destruction. At least according to DHMIS. You don't think so? Just look at each episode. The pattern here is pretty clear. Each one has a theme you'd expect to see on a show like Sesame Street. Creativity, how time works, love, technology and computers, healthy eating, and dreams. But in every instance, that message gets corrupted, and not just by decaying flesh or catching your dad watching porn or a human heart covered in glitter. Let's take it episode by episode. Episode 1 is all about the virtues of creativity, except it portrays certain types of creativity as being right and wrong, claiming that green isn't a creative color and that the yellow guy's picture of a clown deserves to be destroyed because it's somehow creative in the wrong way. Episode 2 tries to explain the concept of time, but that explanation is overly simplistic and teaches that time is important, even though kids still can't understand it from the way it's being taught. The clock answers questions about time like,
but when did it start?
And when will it stop?
with weird evasive answers like,
Time is important, and I am a clock.
then when the duck finally tries to explain time scientifically, the clock yells until Yellow Guy's ears literally start to bleed. In episode 3, the Yellow Guy learns about love from a butterfly,
Pesky bee?
or bee,
A little baby pigeon.
or little baby pigeon, or whatever, and teaches him about feelings, but then later learns that love is only okay when it's followed in a certain way, particularly as it applies to religion. Episode 4 is all about computers and how they can teach us a lot about the world, but at the end simply conclude that in the digital world, people end up doing frivolous things like fashion and shopping and mindless entertainment. They're literally getting sucked into a computer and distracted with all these superficial things rather than the information they were looking for in the first place. Then in episode 5, the characters are supposed to learn about how to eat healthily, but the advice of the canned meat is confusing and contradictory. It's also about how certain name brand products are good for you and others are bad. The underlying theme here is clear. The kids show these 3 characters are in throughout the entirety of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared sets out to deliver lessons about the world, but either fails miserably or succeeds in intentionally brainwashing kids to a specific point of view. But why? Why are the creators of the show so cynical about kids' programming? Are they trying to say that there's some big conspiracy behind kids' TV shows? Well, yeah, actually. Definitely seems that way. Dig a little bit deeper and there's evidence that the show's creators are railing against not just kids' TV, but the makers of kids' TV and what their goals really are. Not in educating kids, but in making money. Throughout the series, we see visuals all about earning money, such as the very first thing you see in Don't Hug Me, a newspaper which reads, "Stocks flying high," along with a figure that seems to imply that the value of the British pound is increasing. We also have subtler clues, like a board game in the background of episode 4 that's titled Money Win. But the most important element of this is in a very small detail. Any fan of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared knows that each of the episodes takes place on June 19th. But what you have to look closer to see is the year. You can actually figure it out from episode 1. That newspaper headline about stocks soaring in the UK is no accident, and it's not fiction. If you look at stock records for June 19th over the last 100 years, there's one year in particular where stock markets were hitting record highs on that date, in 1955. In 1955, stock markets all over the world, including the US and UK, broke practically every record imaginable when the markets opened. And if this was good evidence in episode 1, in episode 2, we get our definitive proof. When the clock mentions that the past is far behind us, we see a picture of all 3 main characters with the date underneath that reads 1906-55. The 1906 part obviously stands for June 19th, since the Brits put their date before the month, with the 55 confirming our year. But why? Why 1955? Well, 1955 was actually a huge deal in British television history. Prior to 1954, the British Broadcasting Corporation, or BBC, held a monopoly on British television. But it was 1954 that the UK passed what became known as the Television Act, in an effort to bring an end to that BBC monopoly. This act led to the establishment of the first alternative network called ITV, for Independent TV, in 1954. While the BBC is sponsored by the British government, ITV is independent and therefore has to make its money through advertising. Now, in interpreting this series, other YouTube channels, most notably YouTube Explained, have covered this topic, but they've said in the context of Don't Hug Me that this was a good evolution. I see it the opposite way, and I'm pretty sure the creators of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared would agree, and here's why. This was the first time that advertising appeared in British television, marking an inflection point at which television went from a medium to communicate and entertain to a medium to make a profit, thereby giving executives and advertisers as much and oftentimes more power than the creators. And Britain was especially sensitive to TV advertising. I mean, in the US, we were already used to interrupting TV programs with ads, or not even interrupting them at all. In the US, it was actually standard practice at the time to bleed those regular shows into an ad. So 1 minute you'd be watching the Flintstones and then all of a sudden they'd be selling you cigarettes. No joke. Or watching a game show and then being sold dishwasher detergent in the middle. One piece of evidence that was used against ads was that in the US, the coverage of Queen Elizabeth's coronation was interrupted by a commercial with a dancing monkey named J. Fred Muggs. The British considered advertisements like that embarrassing and quite frankly rude. You don't interrupt their queen with a monkey! So 1954 and 1955 were years that were filled with debates about when and how to allow ads onto TV. And if the behavior of Becky and Joe, Don't Hug Me I'm Scared's creators, is any indication, the issue of ads influencing TV is a big concern of theirs. According to the newspaper The Guardian, Becky and Joe received offers from more mainstream sources to make episodes of Don't Hug Me, but turned them all down and funded the project themselves through Kickstarter. Joe Pelling was quoted as saying, "We wanted to keep it fairly odd and have the freedom to keep doing exactly what we wanted." The implication here is clear. If Don't Hug Me I'm Scared were made for television, it would have had to have been approved by other people whose interests would have been for profit or popularity, not about the message of the show. And when you look at these 6 episodes, it's pretty clear that the messages for a positive, good, inspirational, entertaining kids show are there, but they've been perverted by the influence of an outside force. Don't Hug Me I'm Scared is ultimately a parable for the loss of control that artists trade off when they work on bigger screens. Their messages are manipulated and their morals are poisoned by others with ulterior motives. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, where we watch our internet videos a quarter frame at a time. You think I'm joking, but when it comes to Don't Hug Me I'm Scared, it's pretty accurate. These videos are so densely packed with detail and symbolism that you can watch them over and over and over again and still come up with new Easter eggs you've never seen before. Just look at this one scene at the end of the 3rd episode of Don't Hug Me. The first time you watch, you might see Roy, Yellow Guy's dad, standing there while his son is indoctrinated into the cult of Malcolm. Keep looking and you'll notice the notepad and clock from the prior 2 episodes standing there behind him dressed in white robes. Keep searching and you see Red Guy and Duck there too, when they're supposed to be at their delicious chicken picnic, unaware of where Yellow Guy even is. Or how about here in episode 5 when Duck quits the show? There are a few frames of Red Guy's spaghetti head in the microwave and a few frames later, his legs where the meat man was standing just seconds before. And it isn't just limited to the videos. At the end of episode 5, we see Red Guy leaving a phone booth. Google search for the phone number on that phone booth and you find this hidden video.
The log is in the bin.
So are those duck boats the smoking gun that decode everything that's going on in this series? No, they aren't. But you can bet I took it all into account in my creation of today's theory. Because last time we covered the easy stuff, the symbolism of the story and how it represents a children's television show corrupted by the influence of advertising. But today, instead of looking at what Don't Hug Me I'm Scared means in our world, we're going to explain what it means in its own world. Who are these characters? What is the deal with all these Easter eggs? And how should we be interpreting the ending? Is it even an ending at all? I've got the answers all here for you, and by the end of this video, I guarantee to have you digital dancing. Now, as I watched and rewatched the series, even though Red Guy, Yellow Guy, and Duck are the ones who appear on camera most often, these videos seem to have 2 main characters. Red Guy, yes, and Roy, Yellow Guy's porn surfing father. And that's reinforced in episode 6, where the whole ending sequence of events revolves around the relationship between these 2. But who are they? Additionally, in a series full of bizarre moments, 2 events seem to be the most game-changing. Red Guy's literal mind blow at the end of the computer episode, and the dramatic shift to real life in the middle of episode 6. It was my theory that if we could somehow answer who those 2 characters are and what those 2 events stood for, then this whole enigma ball would unravel. So I started with the guy that we have the most information about, Red Guy. Now, as we established last time, Don't Hug Me depicts a television show with Red Guy, Yellow Guy, and Duck as performers on the series. Don't get me wrong, I didn't say that they're good performers, but they are performers nonetheless. In addition to all the camera and set imagery we discussed last time, there are multiple instances where things don't go as planned, and Red Guy literally breaks the fourth wall to address what seems like someone behind the camera. The first instance of this occurs in episode 2 when the clock begins to talk. Red Guy turns to the camera, genuinely confused, saying quietly,
Who is that?
Then again, at the beginning of episode 4, the Red Guy delivers his setup,
If only there was a way to learn more about the world.
then strongly indicates towards the globe. Even the music cue follows him. Duck then joins in, trying to cue the reveal of the globe, but both are genuinely caught off guard by the computer coming to life. Apparently a change in the script that neither were made aware of. It's made especially clear that Red Guy wasn't in on this change when he reveals that they already had another computer, a cute laptop, but is once again cut off before he can get through his thoughts. From there, Red Guy tries to shut the computer up by saying things like,
Wait a second.
What's your favorite color?
Stop
Do you
talking.
like?
Be
do you
quiet.
have
before touching the computer and causing it to freak out. So clearly, Red Guy is both unaware of and very displeased by these unexpected changes. So then, who is he? Well, that answer comes to us in the final episode, Dreams. It starts with Yellow Guy left alone learning about dreams from the lamp, but quickly transitions to Red Guy IRL at a desk job and singing the Creativity song at a karaoke bar to receive, let's just say, less than stellar reviews. Now, most other theories see this as occurring in the present day, but what makes more sense is that this scene is actually a flashback to the Red Guy's life before the show, when he was working at a boring desk job and had dreams of making a children's television program. I mean, look at the way he pitches the idea of the singing file to his boss, something that becomes physically manifested later in the video. More on that in a minute. But truly, despite the monotone voice, this guy is a guy with dreams. Dreams that sometimes seem like they're getting drowned in a pool of oil, or booed off stage with all the enthusiasm of a YouTube comment section. But within that sea of bored disapproval, one person watching the Red Guy's performance wasn't booing: Roy. And it's here that we finally learn of the secret to their relationship. Roy discovered Red Guy at an open mic night and made him a deal to sponsor the kids show that Red Guy had always wanted. But then, how do we know that Roy is the sponsor? It's easy. We're expressly told it in the credits. Episodes 2 through 6 of DHMIS end with a special thank you to all the Kickstarter backers, and the last person thanked in every episode is Roy, because he too is a financial backer. In fact, within the lore of the series, he's the main backer, a sponsor with greedy motives who gets out of hand once Red Guy is out of the picture in episode 5. We see very clearly in the healthy eating episode that Roy sells food products. His name is littered everywhere, but more specifically, notice the foods his name is on: Roy's Flour, Roy's Health Juice, Roy's Oats, and Roy's Flakes. Most of these are grain-based. Now compare that to what the meat in the can are teaching the children as healthy: all foods that are grain or dairy-based, and also aspic. But this theme of questionable health benefits behind plain foods doesn't stop there. It also appears in a bizarre interview the characters did with the British website It's Nice That in May of 2016. In it, Red Guy says that he's trying an all plain foods diet and that it's causing some disturbing side effects. Wonder if his teeth are turning gray. In fact, Roy's role as a food producer can even tie in with the overalls that he and his son wear. And this isn't the first time that we've seen some product placement in these episodes. In episode 4, the computer prints out a picture of oat cereal and then also shows them a picture of the same cereal in the newspaper. If you look really closely, you can even see the oats digital dancing. Considering the theory that Red Guy is the creator and Roy is the sponsor, this product placement was probably a big point of contention. But with Red Guy no longer on the show as of episode 5, Roy was free to fill the video with as many products and skewed health messages as he wanted to, turning it from being educational to being one big commercial. You can even see it happen. If you check out the final moments of episode 4, frame by frame, you see both Duck and Yellow Guy glitch into the picture. But look closely and you'll see that their brains are exposed, a sign that they've been brainwashed by the computer. So if Roy's the sponsor, then what's the deal with Yellow Guy calling him his dad? Well, he's not lying. As sponsor of the show, Roy can make sure that his son is put into the spotlight. This would explain why Yellow Guy is clearly the most inexperienced of the 3 on camera. But don't think for a second that Roy is some stage mom trying to get his son famous. Quite the contrary. Going back to that It's Nice That interview, we actually hear Roy speak for the only time ever throughout the entire series. When asked if he had anything to say, he responds with the following: "My silly boy has allowed his eyes to grow arrogant and rude. For this, I will take him on a trip to Punish Land." Yikes! When you look at the series, it actually makes a lot of sense. Yellow Guy has been the victim from the very beginning. In episode 1, his painting is destroyed and he's told that his favorite color isn't creative. In episode 2, the clock yells at him until his ears bleed. In episode 3, he's nearly seduced into joining a cult. In episode 4, he gets brainwashed by the computer. In episode 5, he pulls a Scott Tenorman and eats his friend. And then in episode 6, is tortured by an unending barrage of inane lessons. Oh yeah, and also drowns in oil. But if you think Roy's Punish Land stops there, well, boy howdy, you are wrong. Observant viewers will spot horses sprinkled all over DHMIS videos. Pictures of horses, rocking horses, horse figurines, animated horses. Well, in the same interview with It's Nice That, it's revealed that Yellow Guy is scared of horses. He's also apparently allergic to eggs, wasps, crabs, meat, and trees, all of which are elements that we see worked into various episodes throughout the series. Roy's not only sponsoring the series to push his own goods, he's also doing it to push his son to the brink of insanity. Even Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared's most famous Easter egg fits in with the idea of Roy teaching Yellow Guy a lesson. The unchanging date of June 19th has bothered would-be theorists since the second episode, but we have our answer right now. June 19th, 1955, the date which we see hinted at over and over again throughout the series, was Father's Day. In 2011, when the first episode of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared was released, Father's Day was also on June 19th. And this year, the date of release for the very last episode was June 19th, which lo and behold was once again Father's Day. Roy is punishing his son for letting his eyes grow arrogant and rude. Maybe something about catching his dad watching porn. But regardless, he forces him to respect his authority by making every day Father's Day, a constant reminder of who is in charge. As long as the date is June 19th, Yellow Guy is doomed to suffer this torture with no end in sight. Or at least that's what would have happened if not for Red Guy. Which means it's finally time to talk about the ending. At the end of episode 4, Red Guy resists being lured into Roy's computer world, leaving the living room set with Roy hidden in the corner and instead noticing that the computer is hooked up to a mysterious red cable leading to the next room. When he opens the door, it's revealed that he's covered in motion tracking balls and discovers a super low-tech version of episode 1 being recorded. Then his head explodes. So what does all this mean? Well, the head explosion is definitely a literal version of Red Guy's mind being blown, but what exactly blew his mind in the first place? Many have said it's him realizing that he's on a TV show, but as we've seen already, both he and Duck break the fourth wall repeatedly, meaning they know they're on camera. Instead, I think the revelation is a lot more positive. Notice that he follows a red cable hooked up to the computer and that he's leaving Roy's room. A room, mind you, with higher production value, filled with props and motion capture ability, only to find himself in a room with a crude set and props. Red Guy's mind blow in this moment is that he doesn't need the dominating presence of Roy, that he can create his series on a low budget and load it directly onto the computer, i.e. a place like YouTube, without needing a bunch of money. Remember, episode 4 is all about what you can do on a computer. According to Roy, it's all superficial consumerism things, charts, digital style, dancing. But here, Red Guy sees a video being filmed and uploaded directly to a computer. And again, based on what we discussed last video, this is similar to the journey the creators of DHMIS took to keep their series independent. So, Red Guy leaves Roy's series, and then in episode 5, we repeatedly see imagery of him on the outside looking in. He's looking at the series from a new outsider's perspective. Those foreboding phone calls for Duck throughout the episode are coming from him. We see him exiting a phone booth at the end of the episode, for crying out loud. It's him calling his friends to let them know that there's another option, that they can and need to escape, to stop selling their souls to Roy. Duck answers and tries to get away, but as we see, is captured, canned, and consumed. But is Duck getting eaten literal? It's hard to say. Seems like it shouldn't be, right? But then again, Roy is a farmer, and Duck is the only character who happens to be an animal. The can consuming the duck could be the duck getting canned. All of this comes to a head in episode 6. Yellow Guy is the last one standing on the show, held there by his father. Once the episode gets underway, we see the origins of the series, with Red Guy being discovered by Roy at karaoke. We then cut to Red Guy discovering, for lack of a better term, the show machine, which creates the characters and situations that we've seen throughout the previous 5 episodes. Now mind you, none of this is literal. It's all meant to be symbolic. This is Red Guy coming to grips with the show he created and seeing for the first time ever with clear eyes the effect it's having on kids like Yellow Guy. Roy discovers Red Guy trying to shut down the machine and reaches his hand out to touch the Red Guy on the shoulder. It's not a gesture of aggression, it's more like a peace offering, an invitation to come back and work for the show once again. Because face it, what else does Red Guy have? In a society full of negativity towards his ideas, Roy was the only one willing to take a chance on him. And you see, that's the brilliance of episode 6 here. It starts by addressing typical dreams, the ones that happen at night, but when you look again, it's actually about personal dreams, and how seeing a dream achieved, like Red Guy finally creating the show he always wanted, can turn into a waking nightmare. But it's at that moment that Red Guy decides to literally and figuratively pull the plug on both the show and his relationship with Roy, eager to see what will happen next. And it works. We restart the series, but with some very important differences. All the characters are now the color they said was their favorite in episode 1, blue, red, and green. The date on the calendar changes from June 19th to June 20th, meaning that it's no longer Father's Day and Roy has no influence on the show anymore. It is quite literally the start of a new day. And that also makes sense when you look at the sets. At the beginning of episode 1, the kitchen is full of props like knives and plates and books and a telephone. But the reset version at the end of episode 6 is very simple, with just a table and a few other items. Without Roy's sponsorship, they're working on a smaller budget, but the characters are finally free. The notepad flips open and the first episode begins again, but this time it's on their own terms. This time green will be a creative color.